We'll call to order the August 1st, 2024 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to look at the minutes? Are there any comments, corrections, discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes of July?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes. Abstain.
Okay, Martha's abstaining.
Madam Chair, while we're on minutes, is it okay if I make a
Go
comment?
for it.
Okay. I have a concern about the web page and the agenda and minutes page, that none of our minutes have been posted for this year.
Okay.
So it might be good to have those on if somebody needs to check on it. I'm not sure what the procedure is, but I know Melanie has submitted them, so it must be on the town's end to.
Yep.
So if you
we'll
could
get
see
those
that that
uploaded
was
for sure.
done,
Yep.
thank you.
That's noted. And next is to review and sign bills. So we actually have a bill.
We do have a bill this evening. So this is the FY25 annual coalition membership dues. It comes in the amount of $3,500, which is the same amount for last year, so no increase this year.
There any discussion about our bill? Any questions? Is there a motion to pay our bill with funds from our administrative part of our budget?
So I make a motion, we pay our annual dues of $3,500.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor of paying our annual dues, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Next, Chris, you have a logo for us.
I do. It may not have been uploaded to the webpage, but primarily, let me see if I can grab it. I know it was created, I think it was in that old folder, but the logo is essentially the one that we had with the removal of the park bench and replacing that with the spire, as well as some of the edits to the fonts. It is consistent with the color scheme and fonts that are kind of part of our town branding guidelines. So, apologize, I thought it was uploaded, but let me grab it real quick.
No pressure on Chris, but we all stare while he looks for it on his laptop.
Working hard. All
Hot
right.
never boils, right?
Let me see if it's sharing now. I apologize. I said we went with the spire, but I was wrong. We went with the Quillen pen, or Quillen paper for the historic logo.
I make a motion to approve the logo as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving this logo for the Community Preservation Committee, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have a logo. And can we order signs with this logo and with a very simple, this project made possible by the people of Shrewsbury and the Community Preservation Committee?
Can also
Simple, to the point. Vistaprint has lawn signs for starting at $18.39, and those I think would be adequate. Any thoughts?
I like it.
Let's get to the meat of the meeting. We've got some project eligibility requests. They are in the drive, and Mr. Esposito is here to talk to us about them. The first up, and again, we are discussing the eligibility, not whether or not we'll fund or an amount, but if the project as presented is eligible. So, Mr. Esposito, it's all yours.
Well, I think
Please.
you had Edgemere listed first, and I was going to skip that one. We did just have a unexpected visit from the state, a site visit at Edgemere for a park grant that we put in for. But it's very early in the stages, so I'm not really sure where that's going. So I would rather not deal with that one tonight.
Are there any questions about, Steve, do you have a question?
Nope,
Oh.
I'm fine with it.
Are there any questions about the eligibility application, about the project? Oh, well then, if there's no discussion, is there a motion
Oh,
to?
no, sorry, clarification here. So you're talking about Edgemere, or you're talking about?
Edgemere.
Okay. So if we're not discussing it, why are we talking about it?
I guess I didn't hear that part. You said you didn't want to talk about it. I didn't know if that meant you'd like us not to consider that one today?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
then moving on.
Yep.
We won't. Arrowwood Drive, would you like us to consider that one tonight?
I would. I think we kind of left it as the committee wanted to see, look over what had been submitted, and I think that there was going to be some sort of determination on what is thought to be eligible or not. I think that's where we left it 2 meetings ago, the last meeting I was at, so. I don't know, I think it's in your hands, honestly, if you have feedback.
I think our sentiment last time was that should we deem this eligible, which a playground is an eligible use of community preservation funds, in your request for funding, we'd like to see more detail, because the fact of the matter is we don't have $1 million that we could grant for one project in one area. But if the budget were more detailed, there may be some aspects of the project that we could
Well,
fund.
I did send that in.
Okay.
So
I don't think
I thought everybody had that.
that's not in the drive right now, but that is immaterial to whether or not this is eligible. Are there any questions about anything anyone needs to know to determine eligibility? Jason, you've got.
I mean, I disagree. I mean, it is very important to understand whether it's eligible or not, because for $1 million, I mean, that doesn't make, like, that's not some playground equipment. That's a lot more things that are going in there, right? So without that detail, without information, I would vote no. It's the same comment that I made 2 meetings ago. We need to walk through a document. We need to get our documentation in order.
Did you not get it?
Hold on, sorry, let me,
Okay.
I think it's just important that we ensure that we follow up on getting, whether the website be updated, whether we get documentation on applications, because we certainly don't want to waste time and missing cycles where we can be funding these applications as they come forward, right? And I really want to get to the point where we're getting to the crux of the matter, which is, hey, you got $1 million ask for one project and you have another $1 million ask for another project. There's no way to fund them, right? So we need to get past the administrative parts of this and get to the part where we're saying, okay, let's have a real discussion about, hey, what can you actually get accomplished, because we don't have the budget in an annual basis to be able to fund one project.
May I speak? You're quite correct, I believe, but I would say that this is not the spot where we draw the line. We can't declare that this is not eligible at this point. It's got to be discussed and looked at, and we are not doing that right now. So we put this off to where the actual funding application is in front of us, and we have all the information that we need, And we may be able to say, not that, yes, this, go through it. We can't just say it's not eligible right now.
In general, a playground would be eligible, but what we don't know, what we all know, we don't have $1 million. So we could certainly say it's eligibility is no guarantee of funding. And certainly, even if we said it was eligible, we've all said we don't have $1 million. I think we could determine eligibility just on the broad stroke of what we ask in eligibility. What is your project? What is the benefit? We don't ask in eligibility for a detailed project budget. We ask for an overview of the project.
It's hard to imagine that $1 million is for purely 100% eligible asks.
Right. And when an ask is made for full funding, we can say yes, we can say no, and we can say any amount we wish up to what's requested. We don't have to, couldn't, even if we did, but we could say it's eligible and then later fund $1 or fund nothing. We don't have to have it all decided now.
John has a question.
I guess, well, not so much a question as I seem to remember part of the conversation where there was a study of all the playgrounds, and because the people from Arrowwood showed up first, does that mean they should be first in line to get money? And I thought the discussion revolved around looking at all the playgrounds and then try to set some priorities in terms of what, if we had $500,000 to give out, let's say, should Arrowwood be first? Or should some other playground be more eligible, I guess? I don't know how else to describe that. But, if we looked at the whole playground study to determine,
My opinion is that would be Parks and Rec to tell us, Mr. Esposito to tell us which project that he felt was more pressing or more important.
Carl had a comment.
Oh, well, it was along the lines of what you just said. We have an eligibility application in front of us. Whether that's first on the list as far as the park is concerned or last on the list, but we're just dealing with eligibility requests. Are we questioning which one to do, pushing back to the Parks and Recs, department to say that? They've sponsored it, right? So they feel it's worth it. So I don't know why we're asking which one should be first or second. Is that in our purview?
Yes.
You in
Especially when we
particular
get to
on
the
the
next
Parks
one.
Commission, are our, conduit to the Parks Commission.
I am a conduit to the Parks Commission,
Yes.
and what we find is generally no funding every year for our parks, right? I believe, I've heard $20,000 for bark mulch is what happens most years, right? And a lot of equipment is decaying, and you saw, if you looked at the report, there's a lot of safety concerns, and they're removing equipment. So what we're ending up with is not a park, but a vacant lot. So, I don't know. I think this particular one was, I think, third or fourth on the list as far as the worst.
It was, but I mean, the four were basically tied. They were all tied as far as poor equipment and safety.
Yeah.
We're keeping them as safe as we can to play on, so they, meet some sort of standards, but they're not current standards, that's for sure. So there's also the point that this one was put in by a citizen.
Yep.
So this is why we moved on this one. My first choice, honestly, would be Edgemere. That's one of our major facility areas, but again, we're also working on the grant. So if there's a chance of getting that to offset that, because that's gonna be in the same price range. And if I can get half of it in a grant, that would be great. So, I don't think it matters, whether it's Arrowwood or Rolando or anything else. They're all in that same condition. So, this is the one that we had money for design for.
Yep.
So this is the one we moved ahead with.
Martha, were you going to say something?
I was just going to reiterate the aspect that this proposal had been brought forward as one of our very first proposals and was brought forward by a concerned citizen. And that's a model that we want to foster in this community, is community advocacy. And so that's part of the background why we're looking at Arrowwood now. And because Kevin had many meetings with Jenna McCann to work on this proposal to bring it as far as it's come. So it's ahead of the game compared to the others.
What else are we thinking?
So I guess we're back to the question of eligibility. And I guess realistically, Parks, as you said, is eligible now.
It's not a question of funding right now. It's a question of the project as a whole. Is it eligible or not?
Can't this board, doesn't this committee have the discretion to award in part
Yes.
what an applicant is seeking? So what's the harm in finding the application eligible? We don't have to give them the $1 million. We can say,
We don't have to give them anything.
right, but this is what we think we can do.
How would we, if parts of the application are not eligible, since we haven't seen the breakdown, when it comes to funding, I mean, if we deem the whole project eligible and then the funding request comes in, are we able to pick out the things that aren't eligible at that time?
Absolutely. We
Yes.
can
Oh,
fund
yeah,
whatever
that's what I thought. I just wanted to
amount.
clarify.
We can prioritize, I would assume. $1 million is nice, but
And not only that, but town meeting can do the same thing.
Right.
So
I don't think there's any barrier to voting this eligible.
it's not a guarantee of money, and it's not a promise of any amount of money.
Right. We want to review the proposal in detail to see what it entails, to see what might be eligible and not, much like Prospect Park, right, and the pergola restoration, right, that ended up being a replica that wasn't eligible, right, so, right. That's
That
why we
one was
need the details.
that was a clear one, because the new proposal was clear in saying this is what we're asking for, a
Right.
replica, right?
Right, right.
In this scenario, I will abstain from this vote because I don't think we have enough I don't have enough detail for our process to talk about eligibility, and there's nothing really to look at to see what is eligible or not. Now, if we shift eligibility, if you will, into the application process, that's possible too, but that's not how we set up this process. So maybe that's one of these learnings about how we view our process for changes for next year. But I think that as we currently have it, for me, there's not enough detail there to know what is actually eligible.
But our eligibility application doesn't request a deeper level of detail. This is actually one of the more detailed eligibility requests that we've gotten, but we don't request more than that.
I think
but we
this,
certainly could look at a project if we deem the concept is eligible. We certainly can look through and say, but we're not going to pay for that, and it doesn't have to be it's eligible. It may just, we feel as a body that it's not a priority. Certain parts of the project we can fund as much as little or none.
Okay.
Yes.
We have it now. He just posted it.
Right, so
So-
I've uploaded it.
And
now,
just
but-
looking at it, there's things I can tell aren't gonna be eligible, like, demolition of the existing stuff isn't gonna be eligible, I wouldn't think. But in this format, this body would have to go through it line by line, is this eligible, is not. So although this is the quote you got from, whoever, SCE, I think it might make some sense for someone to maybe sit down with you line by line outside of this body and actually figure out what's eligible and what's not, and then come with sort of a revision of this to our next meeting. Having said that, I do agree it's eligible. I'm talking about the funding aspect of it, just because it's hard to read a quote and be able to say, this is eligible, this is not, establishing grade, not eligible, I wouldn't think. So I think I would vote for, or I would be in favor of approving eligibility and then maybe have someone sit down with you and review this quote so that we have something that's easier for us to read and to actually decide line by line what's fundable and what's not. And
I think that's very reasonable, because certainly your ultimate funding request does not have to be what you put on the eligibility request. It can be less, would be good. So I think what Kathy proposed made a lot of sense. Are we ready to determine eligibility, or do you want more time to go through this?
I guess, yeah, what do we need? Is this something we should be voting on, whether it's eligible or not?
Yes. This is what we should do. We should vote on it.
Yeah.
Then I make a motion that we, I'm not sure how to say it, so I'll just ramble on. That we accept the eligibility of the Arrowwood Drive Playground and Basketball Court.
Now, before I ask for a second, Martha, was there something you wanted to say?
I know that there are certain members in this room that are much more well-versed in the intricacies of the Community Preservation Act than I am. And would love to sit down and look at that document with time to absorb it, but I'm having trouble understanding why aspects of rehabilitating a playground, bringing it up to snuff, would not be included in CPC funding, such as demolition, such as establishing grade, because to me, those are integral parts of creating a functioning, accessible playground. So that's where my mind is having trouble right now. I think, if we were to vote now, I would be very comfortable in accepting this project overall as eligible for CPC funding without going into the breakdown of the different pieces.
I don't think there's been a final determination as to what would be eligible or not, for compensation. We're just discussing the project as a whole. But I don't think there've been any findings that one aspect of the project is eligible and one is not. So it's just determine whether it's eligible, let them put their best foot forward at the next stage, and we'll see where it goes.
I guess my intent on making the motion was kind of what you said.
It's just that.
The project is eligible, whether it's $1 million, $500,000, or $100,000 worth of the project is eligible and the rest isn't. We don't know. And at this point, I guess I don't care. It's just that the project is eligible, and we should go forward and find out more detail about the project.
So you made
Unless-
a motion.
I made the motion.
May I second your
Unless-
motion?
Unless somebody here believes the project is not eligible, then we should vote against the motion if it's not eligible.
The
Second
motion
your
has been
motion.
made and seconded, so
I was
we
gonna
should
say-
vote on it. So all those in favor of determining the Arrowwood Drive Playground and Basketball Court as eligible for potential funding, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
It
Okay,
passes.
one abstention?
Yep.
All right, so we'll work on details for that for next time. And the next is Mountain View Cemetery. That information is in the drive. It's under headstone restoration. There is a memo, and then there's a Phase 2 application.
So I submitted the same application because we knew what happened at the town meeting, the way the articles were written. So I didn't see any sense in writing a whole new application when we're still working off the same one. We haven't gone out to bid yet. We're still putting the contract together, the bid specs and all of that, so, I was just looking for the funding that we were shorted on at the last meeting, at the town meeting. For however that, however the article was written, it didn't give us the opportunity to get the full funding. So,
So I have one question regarding that. In your application, you said that you were applying for a $15,000 grant. Have you heard yet?
we did get that.
You did get that?
Yes, that's for veteran stones only.
So is the budget, the overall budget, $15,000 greater than what was originally asked, or is that 15,000 towards the full 205,000 requested?
It's, see, I don't think I have that.
And congratulations on the grant, by the way.
Right, it wasn't part of the 205, because we hadn't had it yet at the time, so we didn't wanna bank on something that we might not get.
Makes sense.
So
So do you?
we would spend that first, and whatever funds were left would come back this way.
Because in theory, you only need 30,000, not 45,000, if you've got that 15.
In theory, but we're also 6 more months into this,
Right.
so.
This is true.
It's hard to ask for by the penny at this point.
Understandable. Are there any questions? Any discussion? Yes,
Why are we voting on this?
because we have to.
No, we don't. We've approved $205,000. This committee has approved $205,000.
May I?
Yes.
Procedurally, this body needs to recommend an article in order for funding to be brought to town meeting for approval.
I agree.
So even as this is a cover page to an application that's already been submitted, we have to take the vote that says we recommend or not recommend this article going to town meeting. So I think the applicant has made a fast pass, which makes sense.
He's approving, what he wants is approval of an additional $45,000 for the project. He's asking for. We don't need to vote on that. All we need to vote on is putting an article on the town warrant,
In the
Yes.
amount of,
$45,000.
and I think this vote's gonna do that.
Huh?
This vote would take care of that, wouldn't
I
it?
don't think so. I think this vote is to approve a new form for an additional $45,000. Because he put in a project eligibility request.
We recommend,
He
okay,
doesn't have, to me, he doesn't have to submit anything. He submitted 205 initially. We went to the town meeting with 160.
yes.
So now all we gotta do is go back and ask the town for the balance of what was already approved as a request.
So, do we write a letter to the selectmen saying, hey, we
Put it on the warrant.
ask you to put the $45,000 as a warrant article at the fall town meeting?
To me, that's all we have to do.
Makes sense.
Sounds good to me.
That makes sense.
I don't think we need a new request. If we approve an additional request, then the requested total is up to 250. The 205 plus 45.
So perhaps the vote we want to take is to request that the select board put a warrant article regarding this project for $45,000 before the special town meeting. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
It has to be in the form of recommendation.
We can't sponsor it, they have to.
I make a recommendation that we reaffirm our approval of the $45,000 that we were missing from last time for the headstone restoration. Again, a reaffirmation of a prior approval. Now,
see the
Trying.
wheels turning, so.
Trying.
I-
Well,
Yeah, the balance of what we approved.
Yeah, it's just a reaffirming
Right.
of what we've already done. And I don't know if that covers us or doesn't cover us, or it's just,
Well, how do we put things on the town warrant? Do we,
you have to make a recommendation to go forward, but we usually recommend the language.
and
that-
that's
so-
where we have the
That's what
problem.
tripped us up last time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's not recommend any language. Let them do it. Just tell them what the problem is, they'll figure it out.
And let us okay the language. So
Well,
that
as
we-
long as they get the 45,000.
Well, yeah, but we had a problem last time with language.
I know, but that was our own fault.
We don't vote.
We were too
yeah,
specific.
We don't vote to recommend, right?
Pardon me?
It doesn't come back to us for our recommendation. That's, at that point, it's just,
No, they've already got it.
Yeah.
the selectmen will sponsor it, the finance committee will review it, and
Yeah.
they'll advance it at town meeting. Maybe someone from this committee can speak to it at town meeting.
I like paper trail. And I hear you were saying, I think this document, this letter speaks for itself. 1 out of 9, +1, right, procedurally, right? We know it's in every CPC community has to make a recommendation. However we want to, back that up, I think this application, this conversation backs up that why does a recommendation being made? So I don't see it as 250, because at the end it was a 160 approved, but I think ultimately what mechanically needs to happen is the language that gets submitted to the select board that's what needs to be approved. So however we want to get there, I think we'll be covered. But we need to see the language, and that it goes along with how it should be submitted so that we don't get into the same trouble as we did last time.
Correct. So the warrant article language should not include the specific references to accounts. That was the issue, is that it had
A source of funding.
specific accounts that were specified in the warrant language, which did not allow us flexibility as we refined the budget to pull from sources other than the accounts that were specified.
Right.
We could reduce that amount, but we could not change which accounts we were pulling from, because those were specified. So procedurally, I think, however the board would like to advance it tonight, whether it's going through the process to reaffirm the votes on the eligibility and funding application, or to provide a recommendation to the select board to place this on the warrant. In either case, however the board makes that motion, I think it's very well understood at this point that our office, at the next meeting, will provide warrant language for this committee to suggest to the select board for placement on the town meeting warrant.
Thank you.
So I think it would be appropriate, either a motion to recommend that to the select board and have staff draft that document, or to recommend approval of the eligibility application as provided.
I thought is the first choice, to make that recommendation of a warrant article language to the select board. Since we have already deemed the project eligible, we voted on funding, it's really procedural at this point, so that to me, makes the most sense. Folks agree? Someone like to make a motion to that effect, or?
I do have a question, though, in terms of timing for the fall town meeting. Do we know the cutoff for approval?
I don't have the specific date for the signature of the warrant, but I would have that language for the September meeting, which I believe would be well in advance of that.
Okay.
Closed.
It should be relatively simple, Chris is used to drafting zoning warrant articles, which are complicated, and
I just want to make sure that the language is already available for September.
Yeah.
And we're not missing a whole year.
yeah.
So, do we need to vote to that effect, or simply instruct you to bring us the language next month, and we'll vote to approve it at that time?
To be frank, I got my marching orders, however the board would like to proceed. I think I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Why don't you bring us the language next month, please,
good.
and we will vote on it then.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get that fixed. Those are all of the project eligibility requests at this time. Thank you for joining us again, the projects.
If I could just give you a little update, we're halfway through the basketball court project at Dean. The old courts have been ripped out, and I believe we're waiting for the poles for the backboards and stuff right now. And then they'll be finished grading and getting ready to pave. We also opened bids. We had quite a few bids on the Camp Wanigan parking lot. They all came in favorable, so I believe we have contracts in the mail right now to get the contractor on board for that. So some things are happening.
That is good news.
Time for our new signs.
Like
That's it. I figured I'd leave on a high note.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, next on the agenda is joint working group update. Jason and Kathy, what would you like to tell us?
I think it was a productive last meeting. We really definitely went through looking at how we could have, using the language that was already a template from the coalition, that was specific for AHTs and CPCs to work in an agreement. Of course, the actual specifics about what kind of project, or that's not known at this time, because really it has to be a prioritization on both sides. But I think that at least we know which direction we're going on that side, on that front. So it's not our project it's not our project award. It's a different document. I think there's also another thing that came up was I believe that there is some good thoughts around the need for getting some projects done. Obviously, there's a housing authority. The housing plan has to be updated. I think that's in motion now, right? So that's going to flush out more needs assessments, right? There's additional units that housing authority is considering as well. So that was put on the table. I personally feel that there's still I think we need to drive to come in with a vision about what are the first projects that come out of this. Of course, this working committee is not the one, right, to bring that out. This is really just how do we operate together. But I think there's still identified as a need to have that vision about what is possible with the funds that are available and the limited funds that we have as well. One of the ideas also came up there is really reaching out back to developers who are in this space that they leverage state funds. We know the governor and administration is really interested in having more affordable housing across the state. So I think that really it's about partnerships that we need to, I think, get in the mode of working with, right? So that and Hector particularly has that background as well, in his outside of his role. So in Shrewsbury, so I think there's some positive marks, positive approach there. What do you think?
No, I would agree. Yeah, I think it was a very productive meeting. I think there's definitely a meeting of the minds. We all want to work together. And I think it was really just understanding how the monies could possibly work. And I think we worked through some of those details. One thing that was always a concern of mine is we just send all this money off and that's the end of it. And the way we've started to draft this document is that there would still be an eligibility process that this body would approve, even though they have the money. And that gave me a lot of reassurance that we know it's going to, we still have some control over how that money's spent.
Yeah, and if I may, just to add, so we do, and I want to thank the members for their work on that, both in reviewing kind of the coalition's template and modifying it. We did meet and go through that with members of the AHT as well, to review kind of how that document can be better suited to Shrewsbury. We do have a substantially completed working draft of that agreement, which is not yet ready for this committee. We've submitted it to town council for their initial input, as well as making some of the internal circuits with staff for their review. So once we collect those comments back, and we have some preliminarily already, we'll meet again with that joint working group. But very shortly, I think we'll be seeing some progress that both the Affordable Housing Trust and the committee will be able to review as a finalized document.
So let me understand this. You took the coalition document,
Correct.
and it's been sent to town council to be reviewed, and
Yeah, so
Modified for
we
sure.
sat down with 2 members of the Affordable Housing Trust, and then the 2 members for the joint working group. We reviewed that internal document, or the template document. Jason had found a couple other provisions in communities as examples to kind of more specify that language. And we went through line by line as a group to figure out, what specifically we wanted out of each of those provisions. And so that, once we had that with a couple remaining notes left, we sent that off to town council for them to vet from a legal standpoint, as well as the internal staff review, just to make sure that we're on board kind of logistically with everything. And so then that'll come back after we have comments. That working group will review those comments. And if everything's all copacetic at that point, we can present it to the committee and to the trust for adoption.
sounds great. Sounds like it did a lot of work, too. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Under next steps, our last agenda we had on, we'd had our annual plan revisions. We agreed we didn't, at this point, any of the bodies that didn't weigh in with new comments or anything, we've asked several times, we can move on without them. But did you make all of the final edits? Because we have not fully approved that. The heat map wasn't done yet.
Yeah, so I believe we adopted everything but the heat map
Okay.
at the previous meeting. And we were gonna wait one last go. So at this point, I'm happy to bring the heat map back up if we wanna finally adopt that as well in tandem with the full document, but
We approved the plan itself.
But
We already approved the plan.
Right.
I thought we
we
did.
did,
Yeah.
but we didn't do the last parts of it. I know you were concerned about the heat map last time.
Yes. Well, it was about whether we would get any feedback from those groups, but we left it at if it was that we thought there was sufficient opportunity, there was
Right.
sufficient opportunity to get there. So I didn't interpret it
Do we
as
need to approve the heat map separately or?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. I had one request. When we are looking at the full funding requests, it would be helpful if we have a financial report that we could look at and be certain that we have the right amount of money and where it is when we decide to spend it. If we could have that next month, that would be terrific.
Is it not on the docs?
Pardon me?
Isn't that part of the Google Docs that is out there?
I believe she means from our accounts specifically, not the project specifics, correct?
Yes. Want to make sure we're spending the money. We're spending money we have, not money we hope we have. Is there anything else that?
Yes.
Yeah.
A quick update on the fire engine.
Yes.
Some of you may have seen that it was out and about, taking the chief for a final ride. But it's scheduled to be dismantled in September. So if we did want any pictures taken before, we need to do it quickly. If not, we'll have to wait till it's finished, and then we could do a group shot then. So it's up to you guys if you want to do it. I'm happy to set something up if we want to do it now, or just wait till the end.
How much time is estimated for the to put it back together?
3 years. No, should we just wait till it's done?
No, I think
No,
we should
I
do
think we
it.
should do it
Let's
now.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like
let's
to
do
see
it.
it
Yeah, set
happen.
something up. I'm available.
Those of us that can,
Okay.
will go.
I'd like to see
I
it.
think it'd be nice to have
Picture
a
down.
before than another one when it's
That would be
completed as
great.
well. I know there's pictures of the engine, but not with the Community Preservation Committee
Where is
involved.
it? Where is it now? Which
It's,
is it
I
now?
believe it's still at
Harrington?
the Harrington Station,
Yeah.
as far as I know. I don't know that it's been moved.
That would be great.
Okay, I'll get something out and get some dates so that we can,
Yep.
okay, great.
Is there anything else? You got anything, Chris?
So I do, just for next steps, I just wanted to mention, there's, one or two projects that are kind of looking to come in near the end of our, I know we're getting close to kind of the deadline here. As always, I don't want to dissuade people from applying, even knowing that, the timeline is tight. They're aware of that, but I just wanted to, I'm collecting documents, so I've started a project, or a folder for next meeting, and I've started to put some of those documents in. We don't have the application yet, but I know the board, the committee, would want to see that ahead of time to kind of see what's at least in the pipeline. I've started to collect those documents, if you'd like to take a look, but nothing formal for this
Are
evening.
those all new projects?
The one that I've added is a new project, yep.
Ooh, exciting.
What is it?
Council on Aging, Sensory Garden,
The Council on Aging what? I'm
the
sorry?
sensory garden. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
ADA accessibility, kind of helps with all kinds of, all of the senses. And it's a landscaping project related to designing a patio space that was conducive to that, so.
May I?
Go for it.
So I'm going to recommend ahead of time that we learned from the ISW project that if this is a recreation project, it has to be on a recreation land, dedicated recreation land. So if it happens, if this project turns out to be behind, in land that's municipal purposes, like general purposes, they may not be eligible.
Yep, so the ISU project, what we found is that it needed to be it needed to be fully open to the public and not on private property. This would be located on town-owned property, which is public, that's accessible, so.
Yes, but also through learning, if you, the last, what's it called? I mean, every year, every time they have the coalition has their yearly training. You learn new things each time, and one of the things that was really stood out there was that it has to be dedicated recreation land.
So you're saying it couldn't be behind the senior center?
Correct. Unless the
As an
unless the
example.
land, it's all about the land,
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah.
approved for, right?
I'm just throwing out an example.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yep. So something to look out for if this project is a project.
Is there anything else?
Okay, so let's see, I think when I came in, I heard some tail end piece about minutes, right?
Yes,
Posting
that
minutes,
they
right?
weren't, yeah,
Okay, so that just covers all minutes from this past year, right?
right.
Also, members in expiration need to be updated right on the website. Project funding applications
So-
be
so
updated.
If
We
it's
got
just
some
updates on the
right?
website,
Yeah.
if that is, just email me and we'll update it. We don't need to go through that
Yeah,
tonight at the meeting.
okay. Well, I mean, it's so.
At any point, if there's any update to the website that you guys notice, just email the planning and we'll do it immediately, so.
Great, thank you very much.
Is that your list? Or
That's
is
my
there
list.
more?
That's it.
All right. Is there anything else? Speedy. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second? All in favor of adjourning, please say
Aye.
aye. Those opposed?
Incredible.
That concludes our August 1st meeting.
Great.
We are adjourned.
Yeah.
Record.